An honest conversation about the Bucks backcourt, where it ranks, and if it's good enough to take the Bucks to the hypes we hope they get to. We'll get to that coming up next on Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day each and every day. You can find me on the Bucks radio network throughout the course of the season. You can hear Camille and see Camille on the Locked On NBA show and the Technical Foul podcast as well. Today's episode of Locked On Bucks is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Kind of stumbled through the open there, Camille, but basically, let's talk about the backcourt. Van and I took a look at the front court and gave our rankings where we would slot them in terms of tiers, and we were obviously very high. I think that's what everybody would say. Maybe not quite as high as we said, but the front court is clearly the strength of this team. The backcourt is where it gets interesting because you certainly can't classify it as a strength. I do think there is upward potential for it, but as it sits right now, the assessment of looking at this group, looking at what they've accomplished throughout their career, looking at basically what are your career averages and your norms and the expectations there, where would we slot the Bucks backcourt? And the tricky part with this one is there's a handful of guys that I think we would say, yeah, I get this was what he averaged last year. This is what he's averaged through his career. I think it's going to take a step up because of the absence of some guys. We don't know how much of a step up. So to me, that's the tricky part about assessing this, where you almost have to ding them and look back at the last few years. And for that purpose, I stuck with 3 tiers. And you could probably go like 5 or 6, but just for simplicity, we did 3 tiers for the big. So I tiered it out into 3 buckets for the backcourt. And this one, it's basically your guards and your wings is the way that I assessed it.
Okay.
I recognize you probably need more tiers because one of them is loaded with teams. But in terms of the elites, I had 5 teams that I would put up there and say, these are the best backcourts. Cleveland Cavaliers, I put number 1. The Golden State Warriors, when you look at Steph is still Steph Curry and some of the pieces they've added there. I mean, I guess we can, Jimmy Butler's kind of does both, but we'll put him in there. Buddy Hield in that group. Brandon Pajemski. The Oklahoma City Thunder, same argument as we had for the Nuggets and the Bucks. They have the league MVP and a pretty good two-way backcourt besides Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So I had them in there. I had the Atlanta Hawks in there, which may be polarizing for some, but they just have a lot of depth now with how they've retooled that backcourt. And this is not the order per se, but the last team I had in there was the Orlando Magic. So those, 5 teams as my tier of the best backcourts in the league is presently constructed. Do you think any are missing and they're in that group that you would remove from there?
So it was interesting thinking about like backcourts, right? Like in the guard rotation for certain teams, because as I was looking through certain teams, it was like, okay, this is a duo where the names are big and you're like, man, James Harden and Bradley Beal, what a backcourt. But it's like for all the offense that they can create, the defense is a big question mark. So kind of going through it and thinking about like, how much stock do you put in the players that might be more so one-way players, even if they're both elite at it, like the Lakers, for example, where you have Luka and you have Austin Reeves, 2 guys who can go get you, especially Luka, like just the singular talent that he is, what he can do. Austin Reeves, someone who go out there and get buckets, but defensively, like kind of food on defense there. So like, how do you account for the fact that you have these offensive guys, but the defense wasn't really there for them. Or the flip side, if you look at like a Portland, where it's like that backcourt projects to be a whole lot of defense going on over there, but the scoring part, you have some questions on, and just kind of thinking through the tiers. And we've been going through it as a network too, of just ranking the top 100 players in the league for the NBA. And it's just kind of like, well, what do you give the credit to move them up, in the rankings? And the only other teams that I would mention, like the Hawks, were surprisingly high on my list too. I just really like the backcourt that they have there. One that was interesting to me was the Knicks, because it's not the depth of it, but the fact that is OG technically, you know what I'm saying? Like they're guard next to Jalen Brunson. And if so, like I'm high on that backcourt because you have the offensive defensive mix there. But just some other ones that pop into my mention, like the Lakers. Like, what do you do with the Rockets, where it's like you have that aging vet point guard, but you have an ascending shooting guard with Amen Thompson and what he can do there. The Pistons with Cade, and if Jaden Ivey comes back this upcoming year, where do you put them? So like, I have a lot of backcourt questions when I was going through it of like, man, but I think that the tier of guys that you have, I would agree with. The only other team I'll put in there is possibly the Knicks, just because of, again, not the depth piece of it, but just who they can put out there to start.
Yeah, I that one was tough for me because when we went through the front courts, Van and I both said some depth charts and starting lineups and everything else, and some of the data that you'll pull on cleaning the glass in NBA, they'll have Josh Hart as your power forward and OG in the backcourt. I'm never going to sign off on that. OG is the Swiss Army knife. That's a 4. He can play the 3. He can play the 2. So we kind of lumped him in as the 4 and in the front court with the Knicks. So knowing that, I can't double dip and put him in the backcourt. So that's why I had the Knicks in that second tier. But look, that second tier of teams, for me at least, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8. So it's 17 teams. It's basically the bulk of the league you're looking at, and you're saying, yeah, I see it on one side of the floor. I don't see it on the other, or they have one nice piece. They don't really have that same group of guys that we've seen on backcourts throughout the course of the years. The Hawks were the trickiest one for me because I, like you, really like what they've put together. But it's still, I suppose, and this is not to say I'm in that camp, but I suppose it really hinges on how much you're in on Trae Young. They have a lot of other pieces, obviously Dyson Daniels and what he did, Zachary Resachet, kind of a swing guy, adding Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Luke Kennard in the offseason. So it's a really good backcourt. I think you can make a case, and I would certainly listen to it for some teams that just missed that cut to move past them. The teams that I had just outside of that top tier, the Indiana Pacers, even without Tyrese Halliburton, that you look at the depth that they've accumulated there. And again, we can't really take this into account for the Bucks, so I'm not doing it for the Pacers, but we may see big leaps from guys like Andrew Nembhard and even Aaron Nesmith, who's technically a 3 for them. But Benedict Mathurin, Rick Carlisle confirmed, is going to be their starting 2 guard. You've seen some moments from Ben Shepherd. They still have TJ McConnell. They love your guy, Cam Jones. So they still have a lot of nice pieces there, even without Tyrese Halliburton. And we've seen those guys shine in the biggest moments. So I had them up there. The Knicks, basically for Jalen Brunson and the other pieces that they can throw out there. The Lakers, who you already mentioned. I did have the Denver Nuggets up there and still wasn't quite sure how high can I go with this group. When you look at a backcourt of Christian Brown, Jamal Murray, Bruce Brown, it all hinges on Jamal Murray's health, certainly. But that was one I started to nudge towards the middle of that second tier, top middle portion. And then same story for the Rockets, which you mentioned. The 2 other ones that were very interesting to me were the Detroit Pistons and kind of the, not leap, but continued steps forward we saw from Cade Cunningham. You're getting Jaden Ivey back. Ron Thompson. Yeah, Ron Holland. So Thompson's a guy that can play out there. Karis LeVert, you added. Duncan Robinson can give you some shooting at least. So This again hinges on just how much more growth can you see from Cade Cunningham, and what is Jaden Ivey going to look like back from injury? But they have some nice pieces that they've thrown out there, and the Boston Celtics, because we've talked about what the outlook is for the Celtics and what their goals are this season, but it's still a backcourt with Derek White, with Anthony Simons. I mean, Jaylen Brown, you could see playing those spots at times, in Peyton Pritchard. It's still trustworthy guys that I think you look at and you know what to expect from them. And that's one of the things that, a team like the Bucks is going to run into, where you can talk me into the upside, but I just don't know that we can look at this and say, I know this player is going to give me X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, there's one more team that I that you haven't mentioned yet. I'm really curious to think how you feel about their backcourt, because I think they warrant some discussion in this middle tier here before we even get to the Bucks backcourt, of like another team to kind of think about, of like, hey, this could they're actually pretty solid, but there are some aging concerns to go along with like their young star here, but they have some other talent on the bench. So one more team I want to talk to you about before we even get into the Bucks comps.
All right, we'll get to that team. You're going to spring on me and take a look at some of those Bucks comps coming up after the break on Locked On Bucks. Well, if you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need. Maybe you needed a plumber or some other service provider. If the first person you called did not answer, you probably didn't wait. You just moved on down the list. And that's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. They let you manage business calls and texts from a single app, offer a shared inbox that proves to be a game changer, where you or your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat. And their AI agent handles after-hours calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer. Open Phone is offering our listeners 20% off for your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right, let me just peek at my list again here, Camille. All right. Who's this team that you want to throw at me?
The Minnesota Timberwolves.
I had them in the middle of the second tier.
Okay, because like they kind of in this range too, where it's like you have Anthony Edwards, who is a bona fide superstar coming through, but Mike Conley has been solid, but Mike Conley is getting a little bit older now, so some of the things that you depended on him for aren't coming through as consistently. And we know that they lost Nickeil Alexander-Walker this upcoming year, but they have some young guys on their bench where they think we could possibly plug someone else in here. Like, is Rob Dillingham going to be ready to take a step this upcoming season? Terrence Shannon. You have Dante DiVincenzo over there too. So like, that's another backcourt for me where it's like, this is a Minnesota Timberwolves team that has been to the Western Conference. Like, they've been making some deep playoff runs here. And this is another group where I'm like, this is a pretty decent backcourt. It's held to get like Anthony Edwards boosted a lot on his own there. But Terrence Shannon is somebody who I was interested in the Bucks drafting. It didn't happen that particular year, and then Rob Dillingham. So kind of seeing how they develop, as well as another backcourt for me, where I'm like, they're pretty solid. Before I could talk about the Bucks, like, I got to make sure I mention the Timberwolves here too.
Yeah, and even another team that's kind of around there in the alphabet and other comps to me is the Memphis Grizzlies. When again, what is John Morant? What version of him are you going to get? Mm-hmm. What version of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope are you going to get? But some of the growth you saw from Jalen Wells, Scottie Pippen Jr., who for a one time Bucks fans were lusting over and putting together trades for him, where you had to say, guys, you're not getting Scottie Pippen Jr. for that package. He is cheap. He's less than $3 million. He is very effective. This is great insurance for Memphis. They're not trading him. And Ty Jerome, they added in the offseason. John Conchar can play multiple positions for them. So they're an interesting one to me as well. So as I put together this list here, and I suppose I'll just rip the Band-Aid off now. I think where I had the Bucks slotted in Again, based off that criteria, I think I probably have them lower than you would, and we're lower than most people, Bucks fans at least, would have them. I have them at the very top of the third tier.
Okay.
So I look at it and I say, this backcourt group is clearly better than that in Toronto, that in Utah, that in Chicago, that in Charlotte, certainly Brooklyn, Washington, and New Orleans. I don't know that there's anybody else outside of that I would say, yeah, the group is clearly better than. The ones that I had at the bottom of that second tier, and maybe we'll go through and just break this into 5 tiers, but the ones that I had at the bottom where I said, okay, this is kind of a toss-up to me, and I'm not quite sure where to put this team or the Bucks, and just ultimately landed with, I'm going to be a bit harsher on the Bucks because they lack the individual star power appeal. The close ones to me were teams like Miami and what they've done with bringing in Norman Powell, and you still have Tyler Hero out there, Andrew Wiggins. You could play in that area, but generally the 1, 2, or 3, he's going to play there. Miami, I had there. Philadelphia, right, with small backcourt, really one-sided, but you can't deny the talent and star power of Tyrese Maxey, the short burst that you saw from Jared McCain and what version he is when he comes back. Like, those two are nice building blocks and nice things for Philadelphia to start things off with, but it really starts to drop off after that, unless you're really into Justin Edwards. If VJ Edgecombe pops this year, then it starts to get old with guys like Kyle Lowry and Eric Gordon and Kelly Oubre. The Phoenix Suns were another interesting one because, frankly, you could probably make a case, hey, they should be even higher when you bring in Dylan Brooks and Jalen Green. You already have Devin Booker, Grady, Grayson Allen, Colin Gillespie, and now knowing what his role truly is for that team, that I have a hard time saying right now on paper the Bucks are better than the Phoenix Suns backcourt. And then teams like Sacramento, which seems to constantly be in limbo. I'm not a fan of the way it's constructed, but Zach LaVine, Malik Monk, Dennis Schroeder, Keon Ellis, like, I don't know. Can you right now, without seeing what the Bucks have done this season, say I believe this backcourt is better than Sacramento's? And the last one to me that was the most interesting to say, I don't know about this one. You already mentioned, and that's the Portland Trailblazers. Like, you're going to get defense. And, I mean, Toumani Camara, what he can do there, Denny Avdia, Matisse Thybulle, a ton of defense. Avdia can give you some of that offense. Scoot Henderson, we're still waiting to see the massive jump from him, but there's talent there. Same for Shaden Sharp, and then you have Drew Holiday, that I still think there's much more known with that team than there is with the Bucks, and that's the biggest challenge in properly assessing where the Bucks backcourt is we all see the vision. We saw it for 8 games. We saw it fit in a very small sample size, and I think we see the upside. But we just need a season's worth of data to see that and say, okay, yes, they are absolutely in this group.
And I think that's fair, because that was the piece that kept coming back to me kind of going through this exercise. Like, you tiered them. I just tried to put them in order. I was kind of like, would I take this backcourt or this backcourt? And I landed on the Bucks being at 21 of 30 teams. So, like, and that's, of course, again, because there are some teams like Miami, like the Kings, where you're like, man, the offense is there. Like, they have the cachet next to them. The Suns, like you mentioned. So I can't put the Bucks over them. But do I think the Bucks backcourt has potential by end of season to surpass these groups?
Yeah.
I definitely do. But the thing is, we have to see it. Like, I can't boost the rankings right now based on, like, here's how I foresee this happening. Like, I think that this Bucks backcourt has a lot of potential to climb up in these rankings as the year goes on, because, I mean, one part of it is the fact that we know the Giannis at point guard thing we've talked about. So like, how does that skew things, and what do you need from your guards on this team when you are operating in this way? And I think that the group of guards that the Bucks have crafted for the 2025-26 team, at least at this point, it's a group that can do all of the things that you need them to do: knock down the shots, play defense, keep the pace up. And if they can combine to compete at a high level, this is a backcourt that I think has the potential to move. I said, what, 21? Like, I'm not going to go crazy here, but they're going to be a top 10 backcourt in the NBA or anything like that. But I could see them moving up middle of, like, dead middle of the pack.
Yeah. So I guess you just mentioned your number-ish. We should share. Okay, here's where right now I would rank them at this number: best case scenario and worst case scenario. Things break right, I think they can get up to this level. If things don't go as anticipated, if this doesn't work, which we have no reason to believe it won't, here's where I could see that dropping to. We'll share those numbers. And one other thing to point out about this group and some of the other discourse that we've seen really coming out of the mailbag that you did with Frank, this came up quite a bit as well. We'll get into that conversation coming up after this. Time to talk to you now about our friends over at FanDuel. Summer sports in full swing, whether you're into baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action. FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. It's easy to use, you get fast payouts, and it makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether you're placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you're part of the action. New to FanDuel? Well, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, so 21, is that where you would currently rank them?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess technically I was going to say I'm somewhere in there, like 20 to 23-ish, but I guess technically I would have to put them at 23 if my tier of teams is only last year is only that big and I have them at the very top. Best case scenario, if things break right, they're not going to crack into the top 5. I have a hard time seeing, like, Kevin Porter Jr. would need to be an all-star. Gary Trent Jr. would need to be knocking on the door of all-star. AJ Green is going to be up there in league leaders for threes. If all those things happen, then, like, wow, look at this. But realistically, I think probably somewhere around like you mentioned, middle of the pack. Can they be like 16, 17, 18? And this is all subjective, I get. But somewhere in there for backcourts, if you can do that, it kind of gets back to the offense and defense rating conversation of like, oh, you can't be outside of the top 10 in either of them. And maybe, but I think it's really just don't be really bad in one of them is what we're seeing now. And that kind of goes with this conversation. If your front court is elite and is helping you control the flow of the game there, if your backcourt is good enough, league average, let's see how that plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing with this, like, I don't want people hearing this to think that we're low, on the Bucks backcourt or anything. Like, there's the potential there. It's just when you're comparing it against other teams, it's like, it's just not as high. But I don't think that it has to be at this point right now for this team to have success. Like we mentioned, like, to have an elite front court, if you have an elite front court, elite backcourt, elite wings, then you're probably being talked about as those Warriors teams were with Kevin Durant, where it's like, well, I don't really know who's going to come out here and stop you. Like we've mentioned time and time again, like we're in an NBA right now where there is a lot of parity in the sense of it could be anybody's championship this year. And the reason that it is like that is because when you're looking at rosters and how things are constructed and where all the talent, like it's spread out and there's different styles of play here. So for the Bucks this upcoming year, like you mentioned, like there's potential for them to grow. Like you and Van were talking too about like the, first time all-stars and who has potential to do that this year next to Giannis. And it's like, there are guys who you can make a case for. We just have to see it actually come out and play. And you look at a Kevin Porter Jr. in particular, who's like we've seen him in bigger roles before when he was in Houston. How can this look now when he's in a situation next to Giannis after getting his first chance in the playoffs, after getting this experience here, learning under Doc Rivers, learning from Rondo and whoever else might be around this Bucks coaching staff here and pushing that forward. So ultimately, like, I know Bucks fans might be like, that man, that feels low, or like, how ain't y'all rocking with, like, no, I'm cheering for all these guys. I'm with them and everything like that. But we have to be honest about where they are. And I think, like you mentioned, best case, I said the same kind of up to middle of the pack. I don't think that's a bad thing because, like, you can win with them being that. Now, if it goes the other way where they actually drop and where we have them in the rankings, and now you're like, man, I didn't expect for the Bulls backcourt to be better than what we have in Milwaukee, or man, the Wizards backcourt. Yeah, like, oh, this Wizards backcourt is really popular. Like, at that point, then it's kind of like, okay, maybe some discussions need to be had. But for the now, like, it's all right for them to be here, especially when there's room for improvement and you can see the pathway of like, hey, there's potential here with this group.
There's two things to that. It was different optics because you had a Damian Lillard on the roster last year, but the performance of this backcourt was probably middle of the pack, I would say. And that was basically all prop by Dame. There were certainly some struggles from a number of guys early in the season, and we can go back and forth criticizing how guys were utilized and deployed, and that's certainly valid. But the long and short of it is this was an average backcourt last year. So if you remove Damian Lillard from that situation, even though we just said the importance of two-way play, I think you have to ding them for the time being. It's kind of like, Camille, if you lived in a terrible, we all did, college apartment with someone else, you get your first job, and then you move into a nice place, but you don't have anything yet. Like, well, I can see it. I see the layout. Just got to get a couch. Got to get this. It'll happen once I get paid. That's kind of what this backcourt is now in my mind, of like, yeah, I see the vision. Now let's just see this happen in some games and start to slowly accumulate some of those things is basically where I view their ads. And for that reason alone, if that's what the starting point is, I think you have to kind of keep them lower and just wait to see, hopefully, them climb up there throughout the course of this season here. And I know one of the things that came up with your discussion with Frank was just like the talent on this roster and top tier talent. That is, we've talked about it and dissected it a number of different ways already this offseason, but it goes into the backcourt as well. And that's the biggest thing with this team, because I don't even want to say it, but if you're without a guy for a certain period of time, how do things look? In the past, it would, okay, well, now it makes sense. Damian Lillard can take over in those spots, or Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday can step in and be the guys to carry everything for us in those spots. Or even if another guy was out, well, the other guy, Drew, can kind of keep things afloat here. Who is going to be that guy for this group? Is it Miles Turner? Is it Bobby Portis? Is it, Kevin Porter Jr.? That's the thing that really bears the most attention, or is worth monitoring the most, because when you look at these other teams, and, I think some of the pushback I saw in the comments, which I can't totally disagree with because we have preached this, is talking about, well, you guys, we've seen depth being important once again, and you need to spread things out. So we can't just go back to, well, they don't have enough top tier talent. We purposely move towards this. And I get that, but you still need somebody else to start to come up at least one level here, because let's look at Cleveland. If Donovan Mitchell goes down for a month, they can handle it, right? In the sense that the wheels don't fall off for that group. Yeah. You got Darius Garland. You got other guys that can step in. Boston will just leave aside. But last year, certainly in the last 2 years, Jason Tatum goes down. I mean, we're going to see it this year. Other guys can step up. The Knicks, right? If Jalen Brunson goes down, or if Karl Anthony Towns goes down, are you going to win at the same rate? No, but you got other guys that can step in there. Who is that guy with the Bucks? I think that right now is the biggest question that's facing this team. And again, it's not to say there isn't that guy on the roster. We just don't know who he is yet. And I think the chances are that guy is in the backcourt.
Yeah, and it's we're not ranking this right now on potential of what can happen. It's just what it is in this particular moment. And until someone on the Bucks comes out and proves what they can actually do in these roles in these situations, then we can't necessarily, boost them for it. Now, again, last season we saw some flashes and some things that were intriguing and things that you want to continue to play because you want to see where this can grow into. Kevin Porter Jr., as mentioned, like he had stretches there at the end of the regular season where it felt like he was single-handedly like, hey, listen, y'all, like I'm gonna make some plays. He had 2 games back to back with 5. Like he can be disruptive.
He won the Timberwolves game.
Yeah, like he can put it, and we saw it, but now it's like we got him after a trade deadline. Now let's see it where there's no Damian Lillard. Let's see it when you have a full off season. Let's see it when you are expected to do more consistently. I've mentioned how high I'm on AJ Green. Like I'm a big AJ Green fan. I love his skill set. Can you continue to improve? Can the fouling come down a bit on defense? Can, the shot making improve? And I mean, one other thing, if you wanted to put a knock, quote unquote, on this group, the backcourt is just like, the size we've talked about as well. A lot of 6'4", guards over there, which from a point guard perspective, like, yeah, that's pretty good positional size, but like shooting guards, if you have to play up a little bit, like it can be a little bit more tricky there. But ultimately, again, it's a group that I really like. I think the depth of this group is really good. I think that's going to be important for this team. And even like a Cole Anthony, who we haven't even really spoke too much about, like what is his role going to be this upcoming season? So like, yeah, it's there for the Bucks to continue to climb up this backcourt ranking, but like we just have to see it. And this is going to be a season upcoming here where it's going to be the first time to really get a look at these guys in some extended roles that we were just more so interested about seeing more of last season.
Yeah, just as we said, and it wasn't exclusive to the Timberwolves game, but how Kevin Porter Jr. won them that game. I think there's going to be
a few,
like not only he, but I think there's going to be a couple of those games you can look at and you'll say the same about Cole Anthony coming in off the bench and just kind of giving you a spark of, man, he really fueled our offense at this point in the fourth quarter for a couple of minutes. And who knows what happens if he doesn't give us that. And if you've stuck around long enough, the obligatory Kyle Kuzma mentioned too, like imagine some of those lineups, Camille, with Kuz at the 2 and you got Bobby and Giannis.
Oh
and
boy,
Miles Turner.
Torian Prince wasn't enough at the 2. Let's go.
Well, I mean, Kuz could hold up a little more, but the offense is a question. And no, I hope we don't see that. But yeah, leave your thoughts in the comments. I feel like we are going to get some pushback here that we're being too negative and too down on this group. I think it's a fair assessment, and we both have said, look, I don't think this is where they finish the season, and these are all subjective rankings. So that's the toughest part is like I can't look at it and say, well, look at the net rating for this group. But I don't think when we revisit this at any point during the season or end of season, we're looking at it and saying like, man, the Bucks backcourt really sucked. This wasn't good enough. Like I think it's gonna move up throughout the course of the season, but just coming in right now and seeing here's where the strength is, here's what this group is. I think realistically you have to say, yeah, they're probably it's in the bottom third right now, but there's arguably more potential with this group than a lot of the other teams that are in front of them.
Yeah, could not agree more about the potential aspect of it. And I'll also say this as we get ready to wrap here too. This Bucks backcourt, I think for them too, and we talked about this a little bit with Frank when we did the mailbag of like the defense aspect of it, which I mentioned in the first segment of like ranking through some of these backcourts. My struggle was like, man, the offense is so potent here, but like the other side of the ball, I have a lot of questions. And I think that's another way that this Bucks backcourt group can continue to climb in the rankings, because you think about the team 2 years ago when it was like Malik Beasley being in charge of point of attack defense. And it's like, man, this is not working out. I think that they have a good blend of guys who can knock down shots. The shot creation, self-shot creation is going to be a question. Like we think Kevin Porter Jr. has it. We think Gary Trent Jr. has it. We know Cole Anthony can do it off the bench, but like who can do it consistently? But defensively, I think this group has a lot, especially with like a Ryan Rollins coming off the bench as well. So like that part of the ball too, if this Bucks backcourt can really lock in defensively, knowing that they have that help behind them with Giannis, with Miles Turner, I think that's another pathway forward for them to continue to come up these rankings.
Yeah, leave your thoughts there on where you would put this Bucks team. Who are the teams that are closest to them in terms of backcourt as well? We still have a ton of mailbag questions to get to. You and Frank only scratched the surface on those, so we're going to continue to knock some of those out throughout the course of the offseason. I don't have any sourced intel on this. I've tried to accumulate some and checked in with some people, but still have not gotten anything firm. I think we're going to see the schedule late next week for the Bucks and all teams. So we'll certainly have that to dig into as well. I don't anticipate a change here, but are the Bucks back on the Christmas Day slate? We'll see then. When do we get to see Miles Turner return to Indiana? Who's the home opener against? And when are those Bucks Pacers games? So I think we're getting that late next week. So we'll certainly keep our eyes peeled for that. I think that'll do it for today's show and for the week. Continue to drop in your questions on the mailbag as well. You can tweet them at any of the three of us, Frank, Camille, and myself, or send them to that email as well. And you can find that on the YouTube page that we have. Any big plans for the weekend, Camille?
Trying to stay cool. Trying to stay
Is it
cool.
supposed to be hot?
Yes, I think it's going to be like in the 90s today. And it's very humid. It's back to the oppressive dew points. So, yeah, trying to stay cool from all the humidity and heat coming this way.
So not just walking around State Fair all day.
Not all day. No, if you catch me at State Fair, it'll be early. Early.
Anybody that's going to be there, look for me. Talk about Locked On Bucks. I'll be at Billy Strings tonight. So shouts to all the Locked On Bucks fans that are also fans of Billy. And if you run into me there, Fiserv tonight, we can catch up and discuss this list even further. That'll do it for today's show. For Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again next week on Locked On Bucks.